Now I'm recording.
Okay. Set this one up. All right. Camera's recording, and yeah, and then I'm gonna clap twice to sync it, and then we're gonna be ready to go. And anything, if you know something happens, or if you say something, you can always rewind and say the last phrase. It should be fun. And just have like a conversation. Just don't mind us. We're here recorded, and then in the like in halfway through it, I'll say we'll change batteries. We could pause it, and then we'll go back.
Just go like this here on this side. Yeah, the fly Sorry.
I can talk behind the ear.
Yeah, así sabe.
Ya, Pepe.
Ujú.
Son las canas, mira, no se quieren.
Está bien, está bien.
So we're here with Raíces Latinas, Agriculture in McHenry County. And I'm going to start just by asking your name. Introduce yourself.
Well, my name is Maria Isabel Reyes, but everybody calls me Betty, so everybody calls me by Betty, knows me by Betty.
Okay. And Betty, where were you born?
I was born in Del Rio, Texas. Del Rio,
Okay.
Texas.
Okay. And what year were you born in?
1970.
Okay. Okay. What are your mom and dad's names?
My dad's name era Roberto Reyes Sanchez, and my mom's name was Estela Reyes Galarza.
Okay. And do you have any brothers and sisters?
I have an older sister, her name is Maria Reyes, and they call her Pequeña, and then I have a younger sister, her name's Laura.
Okay. So you were in the middle.
I'm the middle child.
Okay. When you were growing up in Del Rio, what type of work did your family do? What did your parents do to support the family?
My dad was a farm worker. He worked in different kind of farms. And at that time, growing up in the border town, my grandfather, Don Jesus, he would go to farm to get job, and my dad would follow him.
Okay. So they were migrants.
Correct.
They didn't work on the same farm all year round.
They would go to Brownsville, different farms. They would go to the pecan farms, different kind of picking.
Okay. And were your mom and dad born in Del Rio?
No, both of my parents were born in Durango. Durango, Mexico.
Okay. And as far as you know, as far as you've been told, what brought your parents from Durango to Del Rio?
Well, my dad lived in the border town, Ciudad Cunha, which is the border town of Del Rio, and at a young age, he came with my grandparents to live in Acuña, and at that time, being a border town, you can come and go across the border easily, no problems. And then he worked, but my dad had family still in Durango, and then fell in love with my mom, brought her to live in Acuña, and then from there they started, coming to work in the United States.
Okay. Was he doing that just on his own? Was he contracted? Was he involved in
I think
this?
he was contracted with, I still found an old picture, his first employer. I think my dad would always say it was Brownwood, somewhere like that, Brownwood. I was young, I couldn't remember, but at a Brownwood. And they were the nicest people he ever worked for in Texas. And then eventually the farm went down, and then they didn't work for them no more. But that was in Texas. And then I think somebody told my grandfather, that there's a lot of work up north, in the north there, over here, mainly north of Texas, like in Illinois, in Wisconsin. And so I don't remember exactly how they ended up at Twin Gardens Farm, but they were there for a long, long time. As long as I remember, we were there.
Okay. When you guys were in Del Rio, and you said that your dad and your grandfather would would do migrant farm working, would you and your sisters and your mom stay home and your dad just kind of went out and would come back, or did everybody travel?
We
To the
all
farms.
traveled with my dad. Everybody offered lodging, so you know it wasn't like a 5-star hotel. It was just enough for your bed and a little stove and fridge. And a lot of them had those outhouses, remember? So it wasn't attached to the house. But we always traveled with my dad
Okay.
and grandfather.
What was it? What was that like? Being going to different farms, different places. Did you like the travel? Was it?
At that time, I was very young, so I don't remember a lot. I remember when we came up north and made it permanently that we stayed in Harvard, and that must have been in like 1973 or 4. I
Okay.
think 74 because my younger sister was born in Del Rio, and she was born in 73. So I think after 74, that's when we migrated to Harvard because I started kindergarten in Harvard.
At Harvard.
And so that must have been in 1975. But prior to that, I just hear whatever my dad used to tell us, where he used to work and what he used to do
Okay.
prior to moving to Harvard.
Okay. So you don't remember the migrant times very well. Sounds like you were pretty young.
Yeah, I was a little young, yes. But I do remember a lot of the migrant workers coming from Texas, working on the farm at Harvard, on Harvard.
Okay. So yeah, I was going to ask you again. Again, since you were so young, from what you remember, what got your dad and your mom to Harvard? It's almost like you're going from one end of the country to the other.
I think it was somebody that my dad and grandpa knew. They told them, hey, you know, there's better opportunity, you know, they give you housing and it's not as bad as in Texas. And so I think that's what made them come.
Okay.
Because the heat in Texas is really bad. So working in the fields is horrible. I know that, you know, but it's hot over here too. But then you had the springtime and the temperatures were not as bad as they were in Texas.
Sure.
Because Texas starting in the morning all the way to afternoon, you were still in 100 degrees. Here, because I remember we used to go to the fields like at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning to beat the heat and do a lot of stuff before it got really hot here in Harvard.
Even here at Harvard, you would have to
Mhm.
get stuff done
Mhm.
early in the morning.
Everybody woke up early.
Okay. What are your kind of first memories of living at Twin Gardens? Because you got there pretty young. I assume you weren't working. What was it like just living there, being a kid on the farm, being a kid at Twin Gardens?
It was like your own town, because you had all these little houses there, and you had people living there, and I think we were all close knit, and you made friends, because still have friends from Twin Garden Farms. So to me, being a kid, I just seen it as playing 24/7 with a whole bunch of kids that their parents were never home because they were working. My parents were never home because they were working. That means we were playing constantly, you know. We were actually kids.
You got to be
We
kids.
enjoyed our youth, you know, playing in the mud, climbing trees, doing the mazes in the cornfield, stuff like that. Because our parents, my mom would wake up in the morning and she would make breakfast and have it ready for us. So when we woke up, we had food to eat, and you know, buy us milk and cereal because we were young. That's what we eat. Mi mamá nos hacía taquitos de burritos, and that's what we'd eat too. But all day we were like free. It was like our own little world because we had every other person had kids, and so we played with their kids, and we all played together. So to me, the memory of being at Twin Gardens Farm when I was a young girl, it was fun. It was all fun until I turned 13, 14, 15, and then my parents say, hey, you're old enough to go and work, so go work. And I don't want to. No, it's not like you want to. It's like you have to work. You have to learn the value of working and earning your money. So I think because it was in a private land or we were in our own community, they never checked if you were a minor or not, or if you can work. Because I remember I was working since I was 13. You know, picking asparagus, packing corn. I remember my little fingers had little blisters between them from packing and planting cabbage and broccoli. So for my childhood, from when I remember till like 13, when possibly 12, I remember when we would start working. So my fun time was short
Mhm.
because I had to work. So after that, when I worked there since till I turned 18, and then
So yeah, you mentioned playing in the mud, kind of running, doing corn mazes. I was just curious, again, as a kid, what were some of the other things you would do to entertain yourselves when your parents were working?
back then I remember, because you have to remember, my family basically stayed in Harvard because when we started going to school, it wasn't easy for us to miss school, right? So
It
on
was
the-
or it wasn't?
it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy because then you always got held behind because we didn't do our homework, you know, or we weren't in classes, so we lost a lot of education, if you
Mhm.
want to say it. And so when you had people, the kids from Texas coming in, and we're here in a small town of Harvard, and all, you know, because of my friend, when she came back, I didn't even know who Menudo was, and that was that group. Because I lived in Harvard. Remember, I lived in Harvard. There was not, the only Hispanics I knew were the Hispanics that lived on the farm. And when I was in school, it was all Caucasian people, okay? And so when my friends came, oh, it's March. Allá van a venir los de Texas, right? They're all coming from Texas, it's March. So they come in because they're out there in the big city of Laredo or Piedras Negras, wherever they came from. Obviously, it's bigger than Harvard. And they come in with musics and outfit and stuff that I, living in that little town that's nobody in the wintertime, I didn't know. So my friends would come in with, I told you that's when I heard Menudo for the first time. And then my other friends, they came, they were break dancers, so they were break dancing. See, you know what I mean? So, I mean, we all got along. We all played like hide and go seek, tags, dance, and everybody had, I remember that time, Father Vincent and Father Walter would go do masses in Harvard. So a lot of us did our first communion at the same time at the farm too. So I mean, for fun, if we weren't working or in school, yeah, we made little mud houses. We played hide and go seek. We danced. We joked around, stuff like that. You know,
Okay,
normal childhood.
okay. What was the... We'll kind of get down to basics just from when you were growing up
Mhm.
out there. What was the housing like at Twin Gardens compared to some of the places you would stay at when you guys were migrating down in Texas?
Okay, the houses, they had trailer homes there, so now the trailer homes had running water and bathroom. And they had some other houses that were more for like single men that didn't have a family. So the people with family got the trailers. And there were other houses like the one I lived in that had bedrooms and kitchen and running water and bathroom. But the other little small houses, they still had outhouses that gave you were assigned your bathroom. So we lived in a house, there's a couple of houses at the farm that people lived year-round.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have been my family, and then the Mesas were there year-round, and who else? Year-round, I think that was the only two families. The Mesas and I were the only families that stayed year-round. Everybody else went to Laredo or Texas, wherever they came from. But those houses that we lived in were normal houses, but they did have smaller two-bedroom houses with outhouses outside. So you still had to go to the bathroom outside in there. And then all the other people, they had children and they had trailers. And since they would come every year, they would still have the same trailer. Every year they come, same house, same,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So then when your family moved up to Twin Gardens, did you get to go to, from what you remember, did you immediately go to live in the house, or did you kind of work your way up from the boathouse to the trailer to the house?
Moved, that I remember, we had a small house first, the 2-bedroom house.
Mhm.
And then we moved to another house that had a kitchen, the bathroom, the living room, and 2 bedrooms. And from that, we went to the main house. That was the real big one. It had 3 bedrooms, a living room, bathroom, laundry room, a basement, and the kitchen. And we lived there for a long time. That's because we were permanent. We were there permanent in the situation that we stayed there all year. But when it was slow, we still went down to Texas, you know, to visit my dad's family, or we're all family, and go back and forth, you know, when it was slow, and then we'll come back. But my dad went from being a labor farm worker to being a truck driver. So that's why my dad was able to stay here year round, because he became a truck driver.
For Twin Gardens? Or
For Twin Gardens.
Okay.
For Twin Gardens. And you know, he would go to do the Jewel run, the Aldi run, Aldi? No, Aldi.
Aldi?
Aldi, yeah.
Okay.
And take food to them. And so my dad was their delivery guy. So he would drive a semi.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons we would stay here, because he had a permanent job
Right.
than just seasonal.
Okay. From what you remember, I like how you use that in many ways Twin Gardens felt like a town. At its smallest, like say in December, how many people were there? And at its biggest, like in, I'm guessing July or August, how many people were there?
Okay, at the lowest, I know it was the Mesas, and my cousins. I had a lot of cousins that did come back, that stayed there all year because they couldn't go back and forth, so they stayed. I don't know, a couple hundred, The slowest so it was just the Mesas, my cousins, and the Cardenas, maybe they stayed there a couple times. Who else would stay?
Like in the winter, how many
That's
people
what I'm
would be
telling you.
living there?
It would be my family, my mom and dad and my sister, plus a couple of the cousins that did stay here.
Okay.
And then the Mesas, Don Jose Mesa, Tipo Mesa. And then the Cardenas, I'm trying to remember if Lulu's family did stay here all year.
Okay.
I
So
think
maybe
she
30
did.
people in the winter? Or must?
Maybe 30 or 20, not
Okay.
that many.
And then in
In
the
the
summer?
summertime, well, you had all the trailers, you had at least 20 trailers and then all the little houses. But those, I wanna say at least over 200 people living there.
That's a big range.
Well, you had, I can remember, you had the Alemanes, you had the Niños, you had, who else? Well, all the Galarzas, the Castros, the Cardenas, los Fuentes, all of them, they all lived there. So, it was a lot of family, a lot of people. Plus all the people, new people, they came and lived in the little houses and then,
So for you, did you like it there more in the winter when it was just small group, or in the summer when there was like lots of people?
in the summer, I was free. I would have fun. In the winter, it's too cold, nothing to do. And then remember, we're out in the country. We're not in the middle of town, so everything was walking distance. We're kids. We couldn't walk into town. So we were stranded, so we would either watch TV. That's what we did. I remember the blizzard of '79, that huge blizzard. That was the best winter because the snowbanks were so big. We made slides. We made the snow was so big, and I remember we had fun in the snow. It was out in the country, so we had fun, and The mesas, Lulu, my sisters, and I. That's what we used to play out in the snow in the wintertime. That's the one I remember because I remember it was so much snow, and we had never seen so much snow in my life. It was a nice experience.
I have different memories of that stuff.
But remember, when we were out in the country, we don't drive or nothing, so we didn't have to drive to work, and if school was closed, so we would play. But it's different when you live in the city and you're driving through it and your plumbing breaks or whatever, your doors are closed. We had tractors that would plow for us there, so it wasn't like we had to wait for the city to come
Right.
plow. They did it there.
Okay. And you said that you started working about 13, 14. What was it like to work at Twin Gardens? What was that transition like to go from just being a kid to being a worker?
I went from being a kid to being an adult because I was doing adult work. You know, things that men and women did, they had experience doing it. I didn't. And I respect the people that do the farm work, labor work, because I did it. And it's painful to be in the sun, to not have a normal running water and bathrooms, you know, and to be out in the heat and bending down and doing all this stuff. It was not fun. And at that time, it was $3 an hour, you know, like to even get $100, you had to really put in a lot of hours. And some of them, they will pay you by piece rate.
Mhm.
Like, was it 75 cents? I don't remember what the exact number per box. So imagine how many boxes you gotta fill to even make any money. So it was hard, intense.
What type of work would they have you do as a 13, 14-year-old?
The same work anybody else
And everybody
did.
else. So you were doing the same work as a 30-year-old.
I was not doing the men's work, I was doing the ladies' work, the women's work. I wasn't using the knife, cutting the cabbage, cutting the broccoli, doing that. But I was packing the vegetables. In the middle of the fields, they had these machines that would give you the boxes, and then the cauliflower, broccoli came up, and you put it in the box. There, I had little hands, and you know that's a lot of work for a 13-year-old. You know, you would come home tired instead of playing, like I was used to before I had all this obligation. I was playing. I would get tired of playing, but now I got tired of working. You know, your hands in the sun and the heat. You had to do it because you listened to mom and dad before. Now nobody listens to their parents, but now we had to work. And I think if my dad and mom wouldn't have let us do that, maybe it would have been, we wouldn't value the work that everybody did for us, that does for us. You know, that now they're out in the fields picking vegetables or fruits. Or value how important it is to have responsibilities and cherish, learn how to manage money, cherish your time, your family. I think that was very important. I think that had to happen in my life to be the person I am now. You know, because now I see the difference between working in the fields, working in the office, or working in a different environment that's not bending and planting seeds or cutting cabbage or broccoli or being out in the sun for 12 hours. You know, so now you value that you don't have to do that. That you did it for a little bit because your parents wanted to give you structure. But now you have choices. Your parents didn't have choices. That's what they had to work, you know.
How long would the days be?
I remember sometimes
What was a typical day like at Twin Gardens?
at least
if there
12
was?
hours. In the summertime, 12 hours. The minimum, I think 10, 12 hours. And then some people work from 7 in the morning till like 10 at night. Some people work from 4 in the morning till 10 at night, you know, until the sun, until you couldn't see no more. You know, and I remember sometimes it was till midnight, especially when it was corn season. We were there packing corn in the middle of the night. So
No, you didn't like corn season, I'm sensing.
I did. I like corn. I did like the season, but that's when we had more work.
Mhm.
July, August,
Okay.
for the corn, because
Okay.
that's what they grew up here.
Okay.
A lot of corn.
And how did that work in terms of you guys getting food? Would you come into town to buy groceries, or did you just get to eat the stuff that was on? How did?
For vegetables, we didn't have to come to town because we had all the vegetables we wanted at Twin Gardens. But for meat and milk, yeah, we came to town. But since we have to remember, we're back in the 70s, 80s, this area, there was not that many Hispanics. There was no Mexican stores or Hispanic stores, however you want to call them. They had to go to Chicago, Elgin, where there were more Latinos in there, and you had to go there. But I know everybody knows this, El Niagara from Woodstock.
Mhm.
La señora Josefina her brother was Elias, and they would have a Suburban, I remember this, a big Suburban, and they would go to the farms, and they would have aguacates, tortillas, stuff that Mexican people wanted. And they would do it every Friday when everybody got paid. You would see El Señor Elias with his truck with Mexican produce, products from Mexico.
We're gonna switch batteries. Gonna switch
Okay.
batteries.
It almost sounds
I
like
got
that.
cut.
Can I press record?
You have to do it twice.
Got it. Okay, it's recording now.
Okay. Okay. Keep recording. Twice. We're good to go. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So you said you would get paid on Fridays.
Mhm.
Were there days off at Twin Gardens? When would you get?
Fridays was half a day.
Friday was half a day.
That means you only work till noon, if you were lucky. It all depends on the work and supply and demand, I guess, but if you were lucky, I think Fridays were noon days and then back on Saturday. And if it wasn't that busy, I think Sundays, another half a day. And then Mondays, again, 12 to 10-hour shifts, or 15, depending.
Okay. So once you became a worker, what would you do on your days off, on your time off?
I would still work, but when it was my time off, I became a little girl and I used to play again. I wasn't much into school, but in the summertime I was in school, so I didn't have to worry about that. We would bike ride. I remember that, bike riding, walk around the farm because it was pretty big. We would walk, ride the bikes, and play with my friends, joke around, dance.
How did that work during the school year? Would there still be an expectation for you to work if you
No.
were in school?
No,
Or-
no.
or
My
did-
dad only let us work in the summertime because once school started in the fall, the job started going down because it was almost winter. So we only did it in the summer, or like if they needed us for like the holidays, like from November, December, or spring break, we would do it. We'd go.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. And you had mentioned that you guys would sometimes go into town for groceries. You said riding your bikes. Would you just ride your bikes
Or
at
walk.
Twin Gardens, or would you actually go into town?
We would ride our bikes into town, the Dairy Queen, Dairy Queen, and just
Dairy
walk
Queen.
into town.
So the Dairy Queen's been there forever.
Hmm. It was actually closer. Now it's towards the town, outside of town. Before it was closer. I can't remember right now.
What was it like coming into town? What was it like
Oh, the
coming
biggest
into
thing.
town and interacting with town folks?
Well, we didn't interact with town folks. We
Okay,
would just
no.
come. Nobody knew us. I mean, I knew a couple of kids from school, but we didn't interact with them. Well, I did, but in school, So coming in town, I remember there was a store where they used to sell Nikes, and we used to buy our Nikes at that corner store. I think it was Stafford Shoes or something like that. And then they had a Schultz, a store they used to call Schultz. And it was like because there was no Walmart back then, I'm telling you. There was no Walmart. And so those were the only local stores in there to buy clothes. Well, local, but we would go to like Rockford or Crystal Lake or Chicago and stuff like that. But yeah, when we wanted something to not be bored in El Rancho, then we would walk to town or hitch a ride with somebody. Hey, they know some right there, or ride the bikes. But that's what we did. I can't complain. I don't want to. I can't complain about my growing up at the Train Gardens Farms or at the farm, whatever you want to call it, because I want to say I did have a different childhood than a lot of people, because I lived in that rancho where everybody knew each other, and we were out of town, so to go into town, it was like 2 miles, give or take. So we had to walk, get a ride, or ride your bike. But again, Harvard was very small at that time, even now it's small, so there wasn't a lot to do in town. The biggest thing to do in town was the Milk Day Parade. Come the first weekend of June, we all went crazy. Yay! We rode the zipper, we came in 8, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We'd seen the parade. That was the biggest thing for us, and maybe the whole community of Harvard, was the Milk Day Parade. That was the biggest excitement, because you had a lot of floats, parade people with the bands, and that was the biggest excitement. Other than that, that's it. Or no había muchas cosas que hacer. There wasn't a lot of stuff to do in Harvard.
Okay.
So there was more stuff to do at the farm than there was in the town of Harvard. Because we played, and everybody would play cards, loteria, stuff like that. And coming into town, we only did it if we were very bored or there was nobody in town. Because say it was a Friday, and everybody took advantage of Fridays to go to the grocery store or go to las tiendas farther away than Harvard. And so sometimes I was the only kid there. And then I was always more traviesa. That's why I always got in trouble. So I would go get my bike or walk into town. And then when my dad would come home, ¿dónde está esta Betty? I don't know, nobody would know because I would never ask permission. Because we didn't need to ask permission because there was nothing to do in El Rancho. So I would leave. So when I would come home, ¿te fuiste? You didn't ask? I would get my little smack. But I was used to getting smacked. My dad was very strict.
Okay.
Very Catholic strict.
Yeah, you had mentioned before Father Vincent and Father Warren.
Vincent, they were.
How were you being outside of town and with the Catholic Church in town? How did that work?
I think they were like missionary fathers, priests, you want to say, and they had their little nuns that come with them, and they were bilingual. They spoke Spanish, and they would teach us catechism class, and then when we were ready, we would do the first communion in St. Joe's. They would use the church. There's something in my mouth. Can we cut it? You're gonna fuss.
Yeah, we'll cut it.
I can't.
Cut. I cut.
I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Oh.
Okay, 2. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're just going.
Okay. So we were talking about church.
Mm-hmm.
How did that work living at Twin Gardens?
Well, we had a missionary priest. His name was Father Vincent. That's all I remember. And his nuns that would be with him. And he would come in the middle of the farm. He would put his table and everything and do mass in Spanish.
In the field?
In the not in the fields, in the where we lived.
Okay.
In the middle, the center of the town.
Okay.
You want to say it's the
Center
center
of
of
the
the farm. In una bodega, like in an empty barn. Like there were big barns over there. So and then he would set up his table and do the mass in Spanish, and everybody would take Holy Communion. And I remember the nuns would give us catechism classes. And the day we did our communions, it was not at the farm, it was at St. Joe's in Harvard,
Mm-hmm.
St. Joseph. And after that, then we met Father Walter. Father Walter was the priest that did the Spanish Mass at St. Mary's and in St. Joseph in Harvard, and St. Mary's in Woodstock. And then we lost Father Vincent, because now they had a Spanish priest. And I remember doing my first communion with a bunch of my friends that were from the farm at St. Joseph's at the same time.
Okay. Do you remember about how old you were when they started holding Spanish Mass at St. Joe's?
Well, I did my communion because the nun said I was a naughty girl and I didn't listen. So I didn't do it the same year a lot of my friends did it, so I did it next year. So I didn't do it at the age of 8, so I did it at the age of 9. So that would have been 1979, 79, 78.
Okay. And at that point, were they doing Spanish Mass at St. Joe's, or were they still coming out to Twin Gardens?
They would do it at Twin Gardens during that time, but I remember 79 when I must have done my communion, it was at St. Joseph. And then when I had my quinceañera, which was 1985, it was at St. Joseph with Father Walter.
Okay.
So around that area, anything from 1970 to 1980, that's when we probably started having Spanish Mass in St. Joseph, that I remember.
Okay. Okay. So I keep hearing a lot about the bodega. What else
Bodega.
what else can you tell me about the bodega?
Well, I remember seeing Juani's interview with you, and she got married to one of my cousins, Felipe, and their wedding was in a bodega, a barn. I mean, they're probably bigger than this library here, and easily you can fit a whole bunch of people. So, you know, we had weddings, communions, parties in the bodega because it was like a venue.
Mhm.
That was our venue because
That
it
was
was
your
empty, you know, and it was big, and we were out in the country. We can have music, we can have whatever you want. Nobody's going to complain. So when somebody got married, we always had it at the bodega. I was always a dama. My sister and I were always damas and stuff like that. Quinceañeras. We didn't have to pay for a banquet hall because everybody cooked and made the food, and that's it. It was a cheaper way. It was nice. We also had fun. I
Okay.
liked it. That's where we held our parties, in La Bodegas, and that's where some of the masses were held, in the bodegas.
Okay. And I know you had said that you guys were originally from Del Rio. The other families, or even the families that would come up during the summer, were they coming from different places, or from all? Where were other families coming from?
I know a lot of them came from Laredo, Texas, or Nuevo Laredo, I guess. It depends if they crossed over. But they were Laredo, Eagle Pass, Piedras Negras, and I know Juani's family is from Uvalde, which is the next city next to Del Rio. And yeah, I think that's where they're El Valle, like over there by the valley. What's the next? Mercedes, Texas, and stuff like that. Donna. They were all in Texas.
As far as you know, how did all these people find out about Twin Gardens?
Word of mouth, you know, all the Latinas. It's a big communication chain. You tell somebody and then they goes down, I guess. That's how they found out. I don't know. And then once we all united and we're all in the town, you know, we all got to know each other. I mean, there's still a lot of people. A lot of them live in Capron. A lot of the people that moved out of because I think what happened to Twin Gardens, instead of just doing farm work, they went directly to seeds. So once they started doing the seeds, everybody left and found jobs somewhere else, and they moved to Capron. Some of them stayed in Harvard, Capron, Woodstock.
Okay. Yeah, I think you had said that you worked at Twin Gardens until you were 18. What type of work? What got your family to move off of Twin Gardens?
Well, since my dad was a semi driver, and you know, making at that time, I don't know what they were paying my dad, but it wasn't compared to making $30 an hour working for the biggest excavating company in Chicago, which was at that time Palumbo.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was a no-brainer. So my dad goes, "No, we're gonna leave," and my dad started working at an excavating company. He was at Palumbo when that went down, Crush Company, I guess it was called Crush, and then he went to Flores, which is on 25 too. That's what he did, and he retired from them. The big pension, if he would have stayed working at the farm, there was no pension. There was nothing. So he devoted, I want to say approximately maybe 20 plus years working at the fields, making anywhere from $1, depending at the year they started working to when he left, around, I was 15, in 1985. Anywhere from $1 to maybe $6.25 an hour, which was the minimum.
And for you guys, when you guys moved out of Twin Gardens, did you move into Harvard?
Yeah, we moved into Harvard.
What was that like? What was that transition like, going from the small town of Twin Gardens to the small town of Harvard?
When I still went to school and everything was the same, we just didn't live at the farm. We didn't work at the farm. Now we worked at, I remember when Ramiro Gonzalez opened his first grocery store, the Fiesta Food. Here in Harvard, I worked there as a cashier, so I didn't work at the fields no more. And then I would also be a waitress because that was easy money, you know, in town, in the local cafes. So we were done with the farm.
Okay.
We started working, no more fields, no more stuff like that.
No more 12-hour days?
No more 12-hour days. Now we had to like drive, get a car and drive to Woodstock, Crystal Lake to get better jobs, go to school at Henry County, you know, and stuff like that. But we managed. And all this that we're talking about seems like yesterday. Like time is still there. Because I still see all my cousins, I still see a lot of people. And the only person that ages is me. They all look the same.
I'm curious. If you were to say, did you like living at Twin Gardens more than you like living in Harvard? Or was it about the same?
Well, now we're changing eras, time, okay? Sure. When I was in Twin Gardens in 1975 to 1980, there wasn't that many Hispanics, you know. But my mom started bringing all her nephews, nieces. So once they all came here, well, it was different because then I had more people to play with and talk to and go to dances and do whatever. So I had a lot of cousins, a lot. When I mean a lot of cousins, just from my mom's side. My mom and all her brothers, I have 72 direct cousins, 72 first cousins from my uncles, my cousins. So it doesn't.
That's a big family.
It's a big family. It's a big family. So I just have 72 cousins just from my mom's side, not including second cousins and all that stuff, right? But yeah, and a lot of them came to Harvard. My mom would bring them. There's a lot of them here, so that's why when I come to Harvard, I have a lot of my cousins here.
Okay.
You know.
So it sounds like for you, it wasn't a hard transition to go from Twin Gardens to living in town.
No, it wasn't. It was a little better because now I didn't have to walk 2 miles to be in town because my parents' house was down Roosevelt Street, so it was just downtown, and then we would walk. It was better. We would walk to school. It was better because now I can play sports or stay after school for activities because sometimes we didn't play sports because Mom and Dad couldn't pick us up.
Well, you're out at Twin Gardens.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, and being Hispanics, parents didn't let you go with strangers.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you can't sleep over with friends. You can't do this. You can't do that. So we couldn't play sports. But once we moved into town, it was different. We played sports. We stayed after school and stuff like that because then we were just in walking distance.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the thing that changed for us, for me at least.
Okay. And that reminds me, I didn't ask, what was it like to be in the Harvard schools at that time?
Okay, when I'm speaking about me and my sisters. It was me and my sister, my oldest sister and I were the first ones in school. There was one other family, and those were the Garzas, which the Garzas have their dad's street name by the Milky Way.
Mm-hmm.
That I remember, those were the only Hispanics that I know that went to school. You know, that I remember going to school with. It was Fernando and Blanca Garza, and then my sister and I. There was no Latinos. So yeah, we were looked on, we were frowned on. But people that know me know that never bothered me. Because they were more scared of me than I was of them. So, but yeah, there was no. Now, if you go to Harvard, I think it's 50-50. There are more Latinos in school than there is maybe American, you know, Caucasian kids.
Bigger.
Yeah, bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, and before it was what, not even a 1%. You know, so yeah, it was just me. And in the school season when the migrant kids came, yeah, there were more, but they were only here for a month or two, and then they went back. And so it was the Garzas, and then us, and all the Enriquez, Juan Enriquez, Ernie Enriquez. But they, I don't know if they were more like landscaper. They lived in Altenburg Road, and they were the kind of Hispanics. They didn't speak Spanish. They only spoke English. But that's a different story, right? And then after that, there was the Hernandez. There was Hernandez. His name was Don Jesus Hernandez. I think he used to work for a butcher. Is that what you call those shops where you kill the cattle? And slaughterhouse, meat packing place. Yeah, the Hernandez, and then my friend Yesenia. She's now lives in Woodstock, and Argumedo was her last name. But that's it. And now everybody's like, it's a party at the high school now because, you know, before I was talking to my friends and I can speak to them in Spanish. Everybody, oh, don't speak English, you know. Oh, don't speak Spanish. You can't be speaking Spanish. I'm like, I can speak what I want, right? And now I bet you everybody won't tell them, hey, you can't speak Spanish because there's more of them than. So it's different. It's different worlds, different times. Everything changes so fast. So, but I did go to Harvard High School all the way to high school to graduation from kindergarten. So this is where I grew up. This is where I got my education because they didn't have education for Latinos. It was very limited, you know, like because my first language was Spanish. It wasn't English. My mom and my dad los hablaban en español. Hablábamos en español. And my dad was one of those, my dad would always tell us, ustedes son mexicanas americanas. You are Mexican Americans, but you will always be Mexican first, then American. And you always have to embrace your roots and your traditions. So in my house, you're van a hablar español con tu mamá y tu papá. Aquí van a hablar español. Fuera de mi casa, you can speak whatever you want. And my dad was very influential in the town of Harvard. My dad did a lot of activities for the town of Harvard. Mucha gente conocía a mi papá, Roberto Reyes, everybody knew my dad. Everybody that worked at the farm got in the farm because of my dad, okay? So my dad would do culture stuff, so we wouldn't forget we were Mexicans, bailables. And my dad would love to sing with the mariachi. My dad would sing at church. My dad was a singer, my dad loved singing. And that's what we grew up, so that's why we always spoke Spanish because we could have forgotten our Spanish, but my dad didn't want us to speak English at our house because if I went to an all-white school, I had to speak English, and I spoke a lot of English when I was in school, but when I was at home, I spoke Spanish, and plus I had a lot of cousins that didn't speak English, so I had to maintain my Spanish, and I think that's the difference between now and then. Now nobody wants to speak Spanish. I make my daughter speak Spanish. My granddaughter speaks Spanish fluently, and right now nobody wants to speak it. And I encourage it. In my family, I encourage it.
Yeah, I was just thinking you were probably going to school before there was bilingual education, so you got thrown into English.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and how I communicated with the teachers, I don't know. But I do have to say it. There was this teacher, my first grade teacher, her name was Mrs. Rushton. I cannot forget it because I thought it was abuse. And that time, if I could have done something with my parents, she would drag me from my hair underneath the table. And I was a little girl. So there was no helping Hispanics. There's no, child abuse if you were a Latino in school. And I remember the teacher because when people do stuff to you, you don't forget.
Sure.
And that was Mrs. Rushton. She was the first grade teacher in Washington School. You know, I didn't know how to communicate with her. She would yank me from my hair underneath the table, and I would cry. And I would tell my parents, but what can they do? We're outnumbered, you know.
So you haven't been involved in agriculture since 1987.
1988, 87, yeah.
So that's almost 40 years.
Mhm.
De lo que tú te recuerdas, what are the beliefs, values, what the creencias that you carry with you from those experiences at Twin Gardens?
That we have to value, ¿cómo se dice? We have to give thanks and value that we have a job to begin with, because it's very hard to have a job when you're a Latino at that area, and now at this era too, you know. I value now that I have respect for people that do that kind of field, because I did it and I know how hard it was, and I respect that. And I want to say thanks to all the people that still do that, because they don't have an option. We didn't have an option at that time, now we do. So nowadays, people, the younger generation, like the generation after me, probably never work the fields. They probably won't. Unless they have their own farmland or, you know, work on a dairy farm or something, but they won't know what that is. Getting up at 4, 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, when you're 12 years old. So maybe farmers, you know, they do that, but not, because that's your farm.
Right.
That's through generations. That's your property. You're working for yourself. You're not working for somebody else. We're working for somebody else, so we have to get up, because that's how we make our money. You know, so that's, I guess, it's kind of different in that kind of sense.
Mhm. Okay. And then I end with a very open question. Is there anything else that you would want to share about your story that I haven't already been able to bring out through my questions? Is there anything I've missed? Anything else you would want to make sure that people know
I think
about your story?
all the migrant workers, all the field workers, anybody that works in the farms, ranch, como le quieran decir, they're taken for granted. Nobody appreciates them. We need to appreciate them, because without them, we wouldn't be eating. We wouldn't have milk. We wouldn't have corn. We wouldn't have fruits or vegetables. And it's a hard work that nobody wants to do. And if they wanted to do it, then, you know, everybody would have farms, planting corn, tomatoes, watermelon, whatever. It's a job that not even the generation new farmers want to do it. I know people that have dairy farms and 150 acres that they're crying because their kids, their new kids, their grandkids, their sons and daughters, they don't want to be farmers no more. That's something that's being obsolete, you know, it's going to be deleted. Nobody wants to do it. So we need to be grateful for the people that do want to do it and the people that still do it, I think.
Okay. Okay. And again, just to end, I do want to say thank you.
Oh my God,
for
thank you.
sharing your story with us. We will keep you posted on the progress of the project. Okay, but yes, I mainly want to just end by saying thank you. Your story is important, and we hope to treasure it and keep it safe so that people in the future won't forget about your story.
No, how the Hispanics made an impact in Harvard. How that little farm on 173 out of town between Harvard and Chemung helped feed a lot of people. You know, little kids work the fields, old people work the fields, all kinds of ages work the fields to keep this country going in feeding America and feeding whoever they need to feed. But, you know, it has to be a job that everybody has to respect those people to do that kind of job. Like I said, nobody wants to do it. And I definitely don't want to go back and do it, you know, because it's not fun being out bending with your blisters and hoeing or getting asparagus or broccoli or whatever you're doing. Not an easy job, so we have to appreciate everybody who is doing it for us right now. You know, I did my share, and I don't have nobody to do my share, you know, because my generation, my daughters, I moved to a town, there's no farm there, so my kids won't know what I went through, because I moved out of Harvard, so there's no farms no more. Even if I stayed, the Twin Gardens Farm is now a seed company, so they don't do a lot of field work. But I do want to thank you, Carlos, for inviting me, and hopefully my story wasn't the biggest or best story, but it's my memories and what I lived as a migrant or a labor worker in the fields, you know. And without that in my back, maybe wouldn't be the person I am now, you know, because now I know you have to work to be something in life.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
All right, let's cut.
Oh, thank you.